Fit to Love Season 2, Episode 16, Understanding Your Beliefs. Today's show brought to you by Hungry for Change, an inspiring film that has the power to transform your health.
Hey, this is Johnny Dumas from EO Fire. Get ready to get physically, emotionally, and spiritually fit with LA's best personal trainer and empowerment strategist, JJ Flazanes.
Fit to Love is physical, emotional, and spiritual fitness to achieve the happy life you deserve. From exercise to cooking, relationships, and spirituality, you'll find all the inspiration you need right here with our host, JJ Flazanes.
Hello and welcome to Fit to Love Thoughtful Thursdays. Today's show, Understanding Your Beliefs. We have with us Gary Van Warmerdam. He is the creator of pathwaytohappiness.com, an interactive website with lessons for changing beliefs that drive negative thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. In 1994, due to his own unhappiness with work and emotional drama in his relationships, Gary became motivated to learn about how his beliefs affected his emotions and decision-making. He studied extensively with Don Miguel Ruiz, author of The Four Agreements, and other best-selling books. Gary realized that with a proper approach, he could gain greater control over his mind and emotions. With practice, he developed the power and the freedom to choose the peace and happiness he was seeking. Educated and experienced as an engineer, Gary brings a common sense approach to changing beliefs, emotions, mindfulness, and living in greater happiness. Since 2001, Gary has been lecturing, leading retreats, and coaching individual clients so they can live happier lives. His methods are not limited to a particular philosophy or approach, but are based in careful observation and getting practical results. When not helping others to be happy, you might find Gary with his wife Lisa enjoying the beaches or hiking the hills in Santa Barbara, California. Welcome to the show, Gary.
Thank you for having me.
You are welcome. Thanks for being here. So I want to know a little bit more about you. How I found you was through just a podcast search, actually. Now that I have 2 podcast shows up there, I was sort of looking to see who else was in the space of happiness and life fulfillment and consciousness and beliefs and mindset. And I found your very popular podcast show called Happiness Through Self-Awareness, correct?
Yes, that's the show.
And tell me a little bit about your work and your podcast. Give us the overview.
That's a 20 plus year overview. The short answer, I was unhappy. I was unhappy in relationship and career, unfulfilled in both. And fortunately, I was unhappy at the same time. So I couldn't go throw myself into the other. I couldn't be miserable at work and focus on relationship or in a breakup and focus on work and be a workaholic and ignore these things. So I had to really look, why am I here? What is causing me to be in these situations that I'm unhappy in, and what's making this decision because it's not getting the results that I want as far as how I feel. And so I started looking inward in my mind. I said, I got to figure out this decision-making thing that's producing the wrong results. And so I started looking inward at what my thinking and decision-making process was, and ultimately, what are my core beliefs that are facilitating those decisions.
And would you say that Don Miguel Ruiz, The Four Agreements, was the turning point for you? Was that the aha? Like, what was the pivotal moment where you had an aha or breakthrough?
I met Don Miguel Ruiz, 94. It was before The Four Agreements was actually written. So I met him a couple times, and each time it was helpful, but there was no big, oh, this is it, I have it all figured out. What I got each time was a nugget, and I kept going back for more nuggets. And I'm like, hey, that was good. That was a good piece. And, well, what else might I learn? And so there wasn't any magical insight that was big enough to say, oh, I have the path figured out. I just was looking for what's the next step and what's the next step. And that was largely for a couple of years, integrating different things. So there was not a turning point. It was just a continual process.
So a little bit of like a shedding of a skin, and then, in terms of like taking off clothes in a way, like first went the jacket and then went the shoes and then eventually went the socks, kind of something like that?
Something like that, except there were about 40 layers of clothes as I kind of dug into these beliefs. I go, these are complex and intertwined, and they take some time and attention to figure out.
And so besides Don Miguel Ruiz and The Four Agreements, are there, and I know you have said that there's no particular philosophy or approach, but what were some of the major influences or major golden nuggets at each stage? Like any other bodies of work or people who made a major impact on you?
Well, really principally Miguel. I mean, I studied with him very intensively for a number of years, and so those insights came from work with him, intensive workshops and things like that. But the fundamental change for me was on one of those spiritual retreats. I really had a heart-opening experience, and I felt this flood of emotion, of love, all through my chest and radiating through my body. And I was like, this is how I want to feel. This is how I want to feel all the time. And that became my commitment. And it was kind of like, okay, now I know what I'm going for. And everything else got reprioritized. You know, if a relationship doesn't feel good, what is it? Let's address it. If I don't feel good in traffic, if I'm unhappy in traffic, what's going on? If I have a judgment about my body or somebody else, that doesn't feel good. Let's address it. And so, because that's creating a different feeling that I don't want compared to this great feeling of love that I found out was accessible and available to me, and really what I teach to everybody.
Well, I really love what you just said about the feeling part, because I find that that's a lot of people get into mindset training and the even hypnosis. And I love hypnosis and thinking and subconscious mind and all of that head stuff. But the bottom line is how the mind affects the heart, right? And how it feels. So I really like enjoying hearing you say about the heart opening experience, and then really sort of checking in with your emotions and how it feels first, and then addressing it in the head. Because a lot of people do it the other way around. They want to attack just the thoughts, and they know they don't feel good, but they don't necessarily have a frame of reference from which they're trying to get back to feeling this pure, heart open love, lack of resistance, no anger, no judgment, all accepting, trusting, surrendering, however you want to say it, experience. So right. And so I've struggled with over time, especially with the first season of the show. I see a lot of addictions that aren't actually healed because they just change the behavior, but the energy's still there. And so on the outside, someone may say, oh, they kicked that habit because now they're not doing that habit anymore. But yet that anxiety, that lack of trust, that fear is still in them, and now it's showing up in other ways. So to check in with your feelings, I think, is really, really critical. And I'm really just happy you said that. So under this title today of the show,
for me, it's all about the emotions. I don't usually start there with people or start there in the process, because people in the West aren't necessarily in touch with them. They know what their thoughts are. They know what they're thinking. They know what they're saying. But if you ask them, how they feel, they say, well, I feel like they're a jerk. They're talking about somebody else's behavior and not have enough attention inward. So, but really, when you get past those stories, what are you feeling is the bottom line, because you can have the better job, but the job you think you want, but if it doesn't produce the emotion you want, you're unfulfilled. You can have the money, and people go after that, assuming that their emotions will change, having these things or the perfect fit body, thinking that their emotions will change, but the emotions don't necessarily follow on from having those things or accomplishing those things. So yes, I always put the emotions first.
Absolutely. Good. Because, I just want to make sure that that's a disconnect, I think, in a lot of the training that's out there about thought process. I mean, even I was under that, because I, like you, in terms of your engineering background, there's a logic, there's a structure, it makes sense that A, plus B equals C, that your thought comes, the interpretation and the thought comes, and then the feeling comes. So of course, go back to the root and think about the interpretation to affect the feelings, but you have to check in with the feelings. And I agree with you 100%. A lot of people aren't in touch with their feelings. They don't have a vocabulary for them. They don't have an awareness for them. And they're very disconnected from their heart to their mind to even be able to feel the difference of what frustration versus anxiety feels like in your body, and to be aware of that. But this show today is understanding your beliefs. So we're going to start there. And I want to ask you, what is a belief?
I relate it to emotion. I'll put it this way as my current example. Let's say I tell a joke, and a person on my left hears that joke and they think it's funny and insightful and something helpful, social commentary at the same time. But the person on my right is offended. Now, one person says that joke was offensive. The other person said that joke was funny. What's interesting when we hear a joke is we respond with laughter, or we respond feeling offended, but we don't think about how we get to that feeling state of being offended or laughing. Something happens in our mind in the way that we interpret that joke that is silent and it's invisible, but it gives us an interpretation. The result of that interpretation is we feel offended or we feel laughter. We have a response. But that interpretation happens silently and invisibly, and that's the place that the beliefs exist. In that silent, invisible space between what we hear or what we see and our response.
So when working with people to get them from point A to point B, they're not happy. You weren't happy in all aspects of life and you wanted to be happy and to take control or take power back of your life, of how you can shift that without external circumstances having to change, right? How do your beliefs affect your behavior and emotions?
Well, some of that is, in the stories we tell, in the dialogue in our head. Judgmental thoughts. Oh, my body is fat and ugly. And, some of that is very opinionated, the ugly part. That's entirely subjective. But we might be overweight. Maybe we're 20 pounds overweight. And we say, oh, I'm overweight. That's less harsh. But you start looking at just the word level sounds factual, so it appears true. But then there's kind of the subtext. What does overweight mean? Oh, I'm miserable. Nobody will like me. I hate my body. That might be a meaning that's in that word. Okay, we don't say the meaning, but it's in the subtext. And then there's kind of an attitude and emotion. Is it said with frustration? Is it said with anger? What emotion are we expressing in that commentary about our body? And at this point, we aren't just saying the words, we're creating an emotion and packaging the words around that emotion. And as we express those words, we express that emotion that we create and we feel that emotion. That's how we feel about our body. But we feel about our body as a result of this emotion we create and express and package in those words. So what is the meaning and what's the attitude with those words that we speak? And therein is often the beliefs.
So how do you start to clean that up, the negative thoughts and beliefs?
The first thing is there's a couple things that we don't try and stop the chatter. The negative talk is often, well, I try to shut it down. Well, they still want to go. And so now we've not just repressed the words, we've repressed the emotions until it builds up and usually has an outburst later. So we also don't want to believe the words. And so you have to take a new point of view, and a lot of mindfulness terminology is lately we take this observer perspective. And that observer perspective is to, like what we do in meditation, we step outside our mind and just kind of watch it. And thoughts arise and go. And so now we are not the one generating a thought. We can watch the mind generate the thought, and we recognize we're not our mind because it just is going to talk by itself and have chatter by itself. So the first part is a really important shift in perspective. And that helps us then do the third thing, which is not believe the thoughts. And then when we don't believe the thoughts, we have less and less of the emotional reaction with them. We go, well, that's an interesting commentary. Well, that's a heavy opinion. Oh, that's a judgmental thing. Okay, I don't need to believe that. And you start to have a choice about whether you believe the thoughts of your head or not. And now we're in a higher level of awareness, and we actually are operating with consciousness watching our mind instead of just another part of our mind watching our mind.
So for those that are out there because I know that there are different levels of consciousness. I mean, just by conversations with certain people, you can tell how self-aware one is of their thoughts and feelings and emotions and how introspective one has been. And let's say you have somebody who, especially with the name of your podcast, Happiness Through Self-Awareness, or just Pathway to Happiness. You have someone who comes and says, I'm not happy and I want to get happy, yet they're really new to this. Have you worked with those kinds of people?
Oh, yeah. I have the full range. People who've done a lot of spiritual work and people who've shown up and like, I'm the first thing they've ever encountered and they're going to try me first.
And what's the first or second step you take with those people who really have not too much self-awareness or consciousness? This is their first time ever stepping into this kind of arena of being aware of their thoughts and feelings. And what's the first or second thing you do with them?
You start picking up nuggets. The podcasts are free. There's dozens of those. But in my online course, and the first few sessions are free also. Just some basic mindfulness tools. You start slowing things down and you start practicing paying attention to what are you paying attention to? Are you in traffic? And are you paying attention to traffic? And are you paying attention to that other driver? Or can you put your attention on your breathing? Because your attention, where you put your attention, is going to change your experience. If you're going to put your attention on this story of how bad traffic is, you're going to have the experience of bad traffic. If you're going to put your attention on your breathing, you're going to have an experience of breathing, which is kind of a pleasant experience. So this little thing of where do you focus your attention and what experience do you then create that's different, and how to do that is a new thing. And then from there, one of the first lessons I give is gratitude. It's like, let's go focus our attention consciously in a particular thing, things that we're grateful for. And as we focus our attention there, we start to create a feeling of gratitude. And now we've consciously put our attention on a place or things in our life, people in our life, and that produces a different emotion of gratitude, which actually feels pretty good. And we've done it by ourselves. We haven't had to change anything in the world, but we have changed where we focus our attention and the kind of story we tell in our mind. And we now have created a new emotional experience. And once a person has that, they're like, okay, I can do this. It might take a lot of practice, but it gives them a quick realization of here's some basic mechanics that we're going to put together of where you put your attention, the kind of story you tell, and how it then creates a different emotion that you feel.
Excellent. And that was for sort of the newbies into this kind of work. And I definitely appreciate it's funny that I do a lot of law of attraction, and I read all kinds of books and study also different techniques. And I hear, so you use the word attention, and to me, which I think is a great word, I also would use the word focus. So in law of attraction terms, it'd be what are you focused on and how to focus. And gratitude, same thing. Obviously, appreciation and gratitude always changes your energy and changes the feeling. So I love those first two steps. Now, could you give us, we do need to take a moment to thank our sponsors when we get back. Can you give us a couple steps like the same that you just did for the newbies, for the more advanced people? Because I do have a lot of advanced people who listen to the show who do spiritual work. That's part of the Fit to Love brand, is that, like you were talking about in the beginning with the joke and someone interpreting the information differently and feeling differently about it. One of my missions is to take and transform our relationship with our bodies and our self-care through love first, right? Having it be coming from love and wanting to preserve and to expand and to grow and to make ourselves the best we can be because we feel good doing that, versus in most of the fitness industry, it's the opposite. It's I'm going to beat myself up, tell myself I'm overweight, and feel bad about it. And then I'm going to force myself to go to the gym so that I can lose weight so I can feel better about myself, because I'll stop saying that I'm overweight. So rather than trying to monkey around that, we want to come from the other place of just love yourself for who you are right now. And those decisions will come out of love, and it will all work better because it's fueled by love versus self-hatred and abuse and all that kind of stuff. So do we have a couple different things we can share for the people who are a little bit more advanced?
If we want to talk about stories about our body?
No, just in general about emotions and behaviors and understanding your beliefs, all the things you gave two great steps about attention and gratitude for the newbies. Where do you start?
Okay, so where do your emotions come from? This is a good exercise to just notice where do your emotions come from, and where do we say and think, what are the dialogues in our head that tell us where our emotions come from, and do they add up? Because a lot of the conversation ahead will be, oh, traffic's really frustrating, that person ticked me off, oh, they make me so happy. It's like, all of those are kind of like my emotions are coming from something outside of me or coming from another person. They are making me feel this. They are making me angry. That traffic is so frustrating. As if something outside is producing emotion. And this is the joke case. Is it the joke, or is it your interpretation of the joke? Is it the traffic or your interpretation of traffic? So to notice maybe, what is your emotion, and then what does your mind or thought say that emotion is coming from, and does that add up? Or is it ignoring maybe the interpretation your belief system is thrown in there?
Great. Well, I want to continue with this because I know you've got so much more, but we do need to take a break and thank our sponsors.
We all want more energy, an ideal body, and beautiful younger looking skin. So what is stopping us from getting this? From the creators of the best-selling documentary Food Matters comes another hard-hitting film certain to rock your world. Hungry for Change exposes shocking secrets the diet, weight loss, and food industry don't want you to know about. Deceptive strategies designed to keep you coming back for more. Find out what's been keeping you from having the body and health you deserve and how to escape the diet trap forever.
featuring interviews with best-selling health authors and leading medical experts, plus real-life transformational stories with people who know what it's like to have been sick and overweight. Learn from those who have been there before and continue your health journey today. Featuring Dr. Christian Northrup, David Wolf, Dr. Joseph Mercola, Jamie Oliver, and more. Visit fittolove.tv/resources to get your copy today. Again, that's fittolove.tv/resources. Are you single and avoid dating? Or are you in a relationship and feel like you aren't getting your needs met and have fear or anxiety around figuring that out? Join me for the Cultivating Confidence in Dating and Relationships class. You can attend live in person or get the download from the class. Discover the biggest mistake women make with men and men make with women. Learn what your style says about you in the messages that you're sending to others. Learn how to manifest the right partner for you or how to influence your current partner. And uncover the unspoken rules that sabotage our relationships and more. Learn more at fittolove.tv/products. Again, that's FIT, the number 2, LOVE.TV/products to learn about cultivating confidence in dating and relationships. Okay, Gary, so I'm an advanced person. I've been studying this stuff for a while. I'm spiritual. I meditate. I do yoga. I read books about meditation. I understand about my thoughts and my beliefs, but yet I'm still someone who's stuck. What can you help me with? What's one thing you can tell me to do right now or today that might help me get unstuck?
Everybody's belief system is different, but in general, it's the point of view that has to shift. If we're stuck, just even the phrase "we're stuck" has a kind of defeated, powerless quality to that statement. And I attribute that to kind of as we study the mind and we kind of say, we look at these different stories we have in the mind, we find out they don't even come from us. I kind of describe them as subpersonalities or characters. We have a victim kind of voice, or a judgmental voice, or an angry voice, or a know-it-all voice, or a fixer. These different parts of our personality come out in different moments. And that "I'm stuck" is a powerless victim kind of quality. It has the underlying beliefs of, I can't change it, I'm not moving, I'm not powerful. And so we have to take that story, whatever story you're in, put it in front of us, separate ourselves from that point of view, and look at it from outside. And one of the ways I have people start doing this in my online course is take the things that you tell yourself, that are repetitive stories, and write them third person. Step outside the story by writing it third person, as if you're watching somebody else say it. We always can, so easy to look at someone else in their conversation. We can see what they're doing, the kind of stories they're telling themselves, how it's limiting or disempowering. Well, we need to be able to do that for ourselves. That's the awareness that we need to unstuck ourselves, if that's a word. And so writing third person kind of gives you a way to step outside of your own point of view, look at yourself from outside as if you're looking at a different person and say, what's that story that I'm in, and can I step outside of it and see the components and question it in a way that we can break it apart and move on from there. Because sometimes when we tell ourselves we're stuck, the first thing we need to do is to let go of that story. Okay, so writing third person has a way of shifting the point of view. And it takes some time, but what you're doing is you're training your neural pathways, the neuroplasticity in the brain. You're building neural pathways after a while that after a number of weeks become permanent, and you'll always then be able to access this kind of neutral observer about the stories in your head that you can then apply to any story.
Great. No, I love it. I think that's great advice for the people who've done the work, and to say, if you're saying something like "I'm stuck," to identify that is a victim consciousness, and it does give your power away because it infers that you're stuck and you can't do anything about it. So to write it in third person removes you from it, to be able to see it differently and then create a different story. So I love that. That's great. Now, if I'm listening to this and I want to know more about you and your work, where can I find you?
You can find me at Pathway to Happiness. And then these action step items are in the self-mastery course that I have online. The first few are free. And I also have a book out. It's called MindWorks.
Great. And tell us a little bit more about your podcast too.
The podcast, that's the lay of the land. That's like, here's all the different parts of your personality, things about faith, because we all have faith. That's the power of conviction we often put behind beliefs. Sometimes our faith is in the story that we're stuck. That's how a belief becomes powerful. And it has nothing to do with religion. So emotions, relationships, belief systems, dreams, all sorts of things like that in the podcast that I find fun and interesting. And then the actual action steps, here's how you go about changing it, I put in the self-mastery course.
Great. So the pathwaytohappiness.com has a few free resources on it. And obviously the podcast is free as well, Happiness Through Self-Awareness. And is the podcast just on iTunes?
It's all over. Everybody's picked it up. It's all over. You can find, I have the free audio on my website as well. So, but the
Great.
Easy way for everybody's iTunes.
And the best way to contact you would be through the website.
Through the website, exactly.
Thank you so much. We're going to have you back. I definitely want to continue this conversation and dealing with the voice in your head. I want to talk about that listen to your show, and wanted to definitely get into what I think plagues most people, which I know we touched on today with the observer perspective, but I want to get a little deeper into dealing with the voice in your head. So we'll absolutely have you back. Thank you so much for being here today.
Hey, thank you very much. Very nice to be here.
Are you single and looking for love? Are you in a stale and passionless relationship that needs a reboot? I am giving away free copies of Fit to Love, How to Get Physically, Emotionally, and Spiritually Fit to Attract the Love of Your Life when you subscribe to this podcast. Visit fittolove.tv/ebook to download your copy today. The Fit to Love podcast show offers you 6 days a week of helpful content to achieve the happy life you deserve. Movement Mondays and Tasty Tuesdays are weekly video casts, while Wellness Wednesdays, Thoughtful Thursdays, Freedom Fridays, and Sexy Saturdays are audio-only shows themed every week to address your holistic life and needs. If the show inspired you, we would love for you to share it and subscribe. Thank you so much for joining us today. Head on over to fittolove.tv for recaps of every show, resources, and to join the community. That's FIT2LOVE.tv. Have a fit and fabulous day.